What up? I got Naskin here with me. This ain't a diss song, but yeah, you know what it is. I'm a cheesehead, y'all niggas cheese whiz. Pittsburgh Steelers, that's nothing. That Super Bowl ring, that's nothing. Pull up in your town when you see me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford. He is the one and only Wes Hodkiewicz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. And Wes, the first quarter of the Packers season is over. The second quarter will get underway officially on Sunday down at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. The Packers are 3-1. The Cowboys are 3-1. You don't want to make too many overarching conclusions after just 4 games of a season, but the sense that I get listening to Matt LaFleur talk, listening to some of the guys in the locker room talk, is that this week of preparation here leading up to the Cowboys is going to focus on 2 things that the Packers are not doing as well as they want to right now, and it's about running the ball and stopping the run. Do you get that sense that this week, 1 quarter of the season done, the opponent that's coming up, the Dallas Cowboys, these are really high priorities here for Green Bay?
Absolutely. To be fair, if you have the number 1 run defense in the league and you have Zeke Elliott coming up on your schedule,
True
it's going to be a big moment.
True enough.
But that being said, I mean, you look at some even the stories that I've written so far this week, with Oren Burks returning to practice. People are asking Montrevious Adams how he's doing with the shoulder.
Right.
Because there is that emphasis there, and you understand that, these last few weeks, the Packers have talked about it. This is not the type of run defense that they feel they can be. One of the things I think is really important to point out with this is, I guess maybe I'd have a little bit more concern if the Packers were running traditional base and traditional nickel and they were unable to stop this. But the reality is because of the injuries they've had at inside linebacker and now at the defensive line, they've had to kind of shift a little bit. We've had to see them use more hybrid packages. Raven Green, who I thought did an exceptional job against the run in the first game against Chicago for being a box safety, sort of reminded me of that Morgan Burnett type, a guy that is quicker, faster, can go with the tight ends, but also can take on a running back charging full steam at him. Well, you lose him, so you have to adjust there, and there really isn't a backup, so to speak, at that hybrid safety spot, so they've had to get creative. But here's the thing, Mike, is that when all the chips are on the table, you look at Ezekiel Elliott coming up on the schedule, you have to be on top of your P's and Q's with this matchup because he can hurt you in so many ways. He can burn you for the short yardage. He can get the 3rd and shorts. He can break a big run. The New Orleans Saints did an exceptional job of defending him. So for Mike Pettin and his crew, looking at that film last week and seeing how that can translate, that has to be a primary objective for how you attack this football game.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at football just in general, there may be nothing more teamwork oriented than running the ball and stopping the run. And the reason I say that, when you're trying to run the ball, say if you're the Packers, you're trying to get Aaron Jones on an outside zone. If one guy in the run blocking unit breaks down, the play can get blown up. And by the same token, on the other side, when you're trying to stop the run, if one guy gets pushed out of his gap too far, or say one guy takes a chance and shoots one gap when maybe he's got a 2-gap responsibility, but he takes a shot, and then boom, the run hits in the area that he vacates, all it takes is one guy to mess up, essentially, and things can start to get sideways in a hurry. I think in some ways that's what happened against Philadelphia, and when Philadelphia got that momentum going, running the ball, they just kept after it, and on a short week, and you have defenders who are wearing down and all of that kind of stuff. So the Packers, they've got some injuries to deal with, but hopefully the extra rest, all the extra film study and everything that can go into a game like this against Ezekiel Elliott, they've got to get it shored up.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a victim of the moment here with some recency bias, but the thing is, Mike, I looked at that Philadelphia game from the beginning, and I'm not saying the Packers, obviously, they were 7 points away from winning it, but I just thought that was going to be troublesome because of the way the defense is configured and the way that they're running these rotations right now. You play those, there's 7-8 core guys that play relatively every snap, and now you got to come back on 4 days, 3 days rest and play again in that type of environment against another run-heavy team. It's not like they went up against Arizona. I mean, this is a unit with Tug Peterson. Again, they're off to a slow start with some of their running, concepts, but when they're at their peak, they want to be able to push the ball. That's why they brought in Jordan Howard. That's one of the focuses and emphasis that they've had for this season is to play the way they played on Thursday night. Now you're going to get a couple days to decompress, and you're going to get a full week of preparation for this matchup for Dallas. The way I look at it, and again, you need to get it shored up. We're a quarter way through the season right now, but it is team fundamental football. When guys are fresh and playing together and, they're playing in unison, that's when a run defense is at its best, and that's what the Packers are looking for right now.
Yeah, well, both teams, the Cowboys and the Packers, have some injuries to deal with heading into this one. We don't necessarily have full and complete updates on everything going on, but with regards to the Cowboys, they're all-pro left tackle Tyron Smith. It sounds like from reports that are leaking out that he is going to miss the game against the Packers, although the long-term prognosis for Smith and that Cowboys offensive line, it doesn't sound as bad as initially feared. But that could be a big loss for Dallas here as they're trying to get Ezekiel Elliott going after a rough game against the Saints. And on the Packers side, you mentioned Oren Burks is back in practice. This is a player who's missed more than a month and a half, almost 2 months really, since getting injured in the preseason opener back in early August. So it's hard to say just how soon he's going to be completely back up to speed and ready to contribute defensively. Jamal Williams is back with the team, though he's not back on the practice field because he is officially in the concussion protocol. And then other guys, we're just going to be waiting as the week goes along here. The Packers will be back on the practice field on Wednesday. They had a short practice Monday. Tuesday is an off day for the players. But on Wednesday, Devontae Adams, Brian Bulaga, and Kevin King, all of whom were injured against the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't really know the status of those players yet, and we'll just have to see if they'll be held out of practice with limited participants. But really, for the first time this season, the Packers kind of dealing with an injury list that raises your eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah, because it's coming in at multiple spots and on different sides of the ball.
Yeah.
The biggest positive coming out of this weekend was the fact that Jamal Williams was walking through the locker room.
Yeah.
He was his typical smiling self. The thing is that, because you're in the concussion protocol, how that procedure works for the league, you're not allowed to speak to the media, so we didn't talk to him yet. But just seeing him come out of the meetings with the other running backs like it's any other day, when you see that type of blow, I mean, that's what you hope to eventually see, is him to be continuing on.
Well, and I'll clarify too, I don't want to read too much into it, but we know with this concussion protocol stuff, sometimes guys aren't even in the meetings because of the severity of what's going on. So the fact that he was in the meetings with the team, no, he hasn't been cleared from the concussion protocol yet, but he's at a certain stage where he's not being completely held out of all activity, which is something that we've seen in certain instances in the past.
I mean, I go back to the Sam Shields thing. I go back to Jermichael Finley in 2013 when he had that hit across the middle and then he kind of just disappeared for a bit and you weren't sure what was going to happen there.
Right.
So just to see, I mean, for what that could have potentially been, a big sigh of relief from just a human standpoint, seeing Jamal Williams, appearing to be okay from that perspective. Matt LaFleur saying, by all accounts, him walking around the building, good signs there. Oren Burks is interesting because he was the one that returned to practice on Monday, and as you pointed out, this is going to be, those soft muscle injuries, Mike, especially when you're coming off a tear like he did with his pec. It's not a bone, right? It's not 6 weeks. You got to play it by ear. You got to go by how you feel. You have to communicate that to the trainers. The big goal and emphasis for Burks this week is just being able to redevelop the strength, start to bang again if he can get some of those reps in there. He's had, it's been about 6-7 weeks now since it happened against Houston. So just trying to gain the confidence back because as he mentioned, and I asked him this in the locker room on Monday, he was feeling really comfortable in the scheme and what they were asking him to do after, kind of being thrown into the fire and then sort of having to take a backseat to Antonio Morrison. He felt prepared and ready to be that secondary option to Blake Martinez. So just seeing how this plays out for him is going to be critical, because I really do believe not only does it give you depth at the position, but with some of these things that are ailing the Packers, trying to find a hybrid safety, trying to find a coverage linebacker that can play next to Blake Martinez. If Burks can be solid against the run, I mean, that's a major upgrade for this defense moving forward.
Yeah, I think it could be as well. I just I think it's smart to temper the expectations a little bit, because, I mean, let's face it, a guy who's missed as much time as he has, and once you get into the regular season where the Packers are, they're only putting the pads on once a week in terms of when you talk about the banging and really trying to get back into football shaped. So to expect a guy to just, to walk back into practice for a couple of days after 7 weeks of very limited and sometimes no activity, and then walk out there on Sunday and try to tackle Ezekiel Elliott doesn't really work that way. So there'll be a process here to get Burks back up to speed and ready to go, and we'll just see week to week how things go in terms of getting him ready. But I agree with you that, I mean, with the way things started with Raven Green in that spot, and then he gets hurt, and there's been kind of some mixing and matching going on with Mike Pettin in terms of personnel and how they want to do things. Just getting another option available for the different packages he wants to run, I think is going to help this defense.
And just getting back to a preferred starter, right? I mean, when you originally line up your depth chart and OTAs and in minicamp, the way you want things to align, the way you prepare, and how you're figuring in your mind you're going to move the chess pieces around, Raven Green was a major chess piece, Mike. I just thought, I mean, that's not going to be a name that's going to, sound off a lot of alarms.
Yeah, it's not like he was suddenly going to become a Pro Bowl player or anything, but you're right in terms of the usage and the way Mike Pettin wanted to employ him in different situations. He was a key piece to this.
Because it wasn't just him being the hybrid linebacker. He was the next man up at the 2 safety spots, and now you saw Will Redmond come down, working through something. Now I believe he was getting evaluated for concussion. I don't know where that went after that, but he was the guy that sort of moved in when Green was out, but then that pushed Adrian Amos to the box. I've wrote about this in Insider Inbox, looking specifically at offensive line, because people were asking about Alex Light a little bit. I cannot stress to you the value of being able to take a backup and plug them into a starting spot, because it allows you to stay strong at your other points and doesn't diminish you at 2 different spots. Yeah. That's not an indictment against Adrian Amos, but everybody understands he was brought in for what he provides as, that traditional strong safety type role. Not just moving the box and playing the hybrid linebacker spot. If you have to end up moving Billy Turner to right tackle because you don't have Brian Bulaga, and then you have to put in another guard at that spot, there are so many different variations of it, but when you can just go to one specific player, that's so valuable for Green Bay. So seeing how all this works against Dallas, again, there's 4 or 5 days separating today and in that game, but what the Packers can potentially have and who could potentially play in that game is going to be critical for that matchup at AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll certainly be talking about it a lot as the week continues. Before we go here today, though, Wes, shortly before we came into the studio here to tape this episode, you were in attendance at a press conference involving Mason Crosby. The month of October, the Packers will be involved in some different cancer awareness initiatives and things like that as the month goes along. And a little bit of news coming out of this news conference with Mason Crosby. What did you find out?
Yeah, so, first and foremost, Packers versus Cancer, this is an initiative they've been doing for the last 3 years. Mason is one of the heads of the Vince Lombardi Cancer Foundation. It's something he's been doing for a number of years. I can't even tell you, probably 6-7 years at this point. He's been heavily involved with that and is one of the spokespeople for this campaign along with Blake Martinez. Each person was allowed to come up and sort of speak very quickly. It's well documented by now, obviously, what Mason's sister-in-law, Brittany, has been battling over the last 3 years. I wrote about it 2 years ago, in her condition and being diagnosed at a very extremely young age with ovarian cancer and how that sort of impacted their lives. Well, unfortunately, now Mason's wife was diagnosed with a lung tumor during the summer, which she ended up having removed I think it was the day after the Packers preseason finale. So a couple different layers to this. One, as Mason pointed out, this was not a cancerous tumor. There was cancer-like, but it wasn't. It hadn't metastasized, so he didn't want to put it in the same category as what the drastic nature of what Brittany's dealing with. But at the same time, I also thought it was a somewhat heartwarming story because it sort of shows you the tight-knit nature of the Packers, especially with those players. Molly actually sees one of the team doctors as a physician, a primary care physician, Dr. Eben. So it was Dr. Gray, John Gray, and Dr. Eben that actually she was complaining of some discomfort. She'd been dealing with some sinus infection type stuff. They end up running some scans on her, and she was dealing with this. Very healthy, lady in her early 30s. Mother of 5.
I was going to say, with a lot of kids running around the house.
The big message that, and I'm going to write about it for our website. I'll get in all the details there. But, I mean, the message that Mason wanted to convey was the importance of screening with things like this and early detection. And, certainly it's timely given what they've gone, the Packers vs. Cancer campaign, the emphasis in the month of October throughout sports and entertainment, media, and the emphasis that has been placed now on all cancers, not just one specific variety. Just another wake-up call, and unfortunately for a family that probably didn't need another one. But
yeah, certainly.
The positive aspect of it is Molly's doing well. They don't believe she's going to need any additional treatment. She had it removed through a surgery, actually the day after the Kansas City game, and the Saturday it was kind of wild because in the same day in which they were told by the doctors that everything was looking good. They felt like they got everything. They were able to save more of her lung than they were initially anticipating. Shortly after that, he ended up getting a call from Brian Gutekunst telling him he was going to be the Packers kicker again here for a 13th or 14th season.
Well, that's what I wanted to point out is that now that some of this news and what Molly Crosby was dealing with throughout the summer and a lot of uncertainty as to exactly what was going on and what was ailing her. Mason Crosby was fighting for his job in training camp with Sam Ficken and everything, and Mason was dealing with an injury of his own. He missed some time with a strained calf. I mean, you look back now at the month of August and everything that was going on. I mean, I don't want to, stereotype Mason Crosby as sort of that, ice in his veins type of, kicker, that whole cliche that you hear. But when you look back at the month of August and everything that was going on in Mason Crosby's life, and the fact that he came through it and obviously kept his job. The Packers are thrilled that he has remained their kicker, but now fortunately some really good news, at least coming out of Molly's procedure to get the tumor removed.
Yeah, I can't say enough about Crosby's mindset and Molly's as well. Obviously, having to battle this and go through this mentally during a training camp. They found out shortly before camp started they were actually initially planning on having surgery straight away, and then it was during that process that they discovered that she actually had a blood clot in her abdomen as well, just through doing the full body examination. So not that necessarily would have turned into anything, but immediately, but long term. It makes you, and one of the things that Mason really conveyed was that it makes you grateful for your family and also, for things like playing for the Packers. He said there were a lot of days where he would come in and, this was sort of a little bit of a safe haven for him. He got to focus on his job and doing something that he loves and being around a team that he really appreciates. So a team captain this year on special teams. I mean,
that's right.
Just an incredible summer that, you really tip your cap to the Crosby family and just their mental, headspace and strength to sort of persevere.
The fortitude to get through everything that they were dealing with as a family. And obviously, you and I have both known Mason for a really long time. I've been here since before he was drafted. I've covered his entire career. And
yeah, because it was 2007 he got drafted.
Yeah, he was drafted in 2007 in the 6th round. There's never been a more stand-up guy from the very beginning, and because he's dealt with position competitions at different stages throughout his career, and to think of he was dealing with that as well as a lot of uncertainty with what was going on with Molly. I'm glad it's all worked out the way that it has.
Yeah, and didn't lead on at all. I mean, it's not something that they were kind of playing it close to the the vest a little bit. And then obviously his involvement with this, and he was explaining the reason it came up. He was just kind of explaining the ways it's impacted him. He lost a grandmother to cancer, his sister-in-law dealing with this, and unfortunately a tumor situation with his wife that, knock on wood, we don't have any available to us right now, but I'll be able to work through that.
Well, certainly the message of the month in this Cancer Awareness Month is if you got anything going on, get it checked out, right?
Absolutely. I want to mention, too, the Packers Pro Shop, again, will be selling the Packers vs. Cancer Vince Lombardi caps. It's actually a knit cap this year.
Okay.
So if
for
it
the
gets
winter.
chilly out, $5 from each of those purchases. goes to the Vince Lombardi Cancer Foundation, and then people that are shopping at the Pro Shop also have the option to add $1 to their purchase in support of that. So a very cool measure and a neat cap too. If I don't have one with me, I wish I did, but
yeah, well, maybe we'll bring one on later this month.
We'll wear them.
The show.
Turn on the air conditioning a little bit in here. And
there we go.
Get the full effect.
Okay, let's do that. With that, we will call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. Like us, subscribe to us on iTunes and other podcast services, if you will. On Twitter, he's at Wes Hott. I'm at Mike Spofford at Packers for the team account. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.
I just love my team. Yeah, that's the team with them big G's on the helmet.